And here we have the coolant jug from this 85 K100 RT, and we see it is green. It's clean, but it's green. Why should you not use green? Green is generally the color for coolant that is formulated for automotive use, i.e. the cast iron block, old car, not good for these. This is an aluminum block. They have a different, I don't know, it's a whole different formula, different temp rating, and you end up with corrosion in the aluminum block if you use this type coolant. We're going to replace it with the proper shit, which is blue. Sometimes you can find aluminum block specific coolant that is not blue. Usually they are red, orange. The hell Toyota use?
Pink.
Pink.
Red first, then pink.
Always something new. But I've never seen it in green. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'll bet my left nut that this is not aluminum block approved coolant. This looks like standard Prestone right out of the 1980s, out of a small block Chevy. So we're changing it. We are going to load test this battery. I gotta say, I haven't seen a wet cell BMW battery in, I don't know, it's gotta be a couple of years anyway. They're a good battery, they just require a little bit more maintenance than most want to deal with. So we have our load tester here. We're a little under 12 volts static, about 11.6, which is low. We should be up 13.6, 13.7. Under a load, 10-second load. And that would have dropped by now. So the battery is okay, although a little weak. And it's recovering back up to 11.5. So we're going to charge this. We're going to reinstall it. I'm going to hook the battery tender to it, or Accumate rather, and proceed with swing arm, rear drive, etc. On your 2-valve K-bike, K75, K100s, you will have this center stand, side stand arrangement. While you're doing a spline lube, before you go put this all back on, clamp it, the center section in a vise with the stand in the down position. And grab it as such and rock it back and forth. That will give you a good gauge of how many miles are on the machine, in case you're not sure. And it's the left side that usually gets all the wear. The right side, as you may or may not be able to see on the video, has barely any play in it. The reason for this extra wear, this is a grease fitting. It's not the normal exposed ball type grease fitting that most people are used to seeing. You need a needle to grease that. And you know what? I can't say that I've ever seen a freaking BMW tech actually hit the damn thing with a grease gun and pump grease into it. Not bragging, but I'm the exception. I'm kind of anal about that shit. Service your equipment. Alright. And that's all it needs. One good shot, and we see it's full. And there's grease coming out the sides. Same here. One pump. Everything's happy. Our side stand also has a grease fitting right there. One shot is all it takes. If it won't take grease and you know that your grease gun's okay, it's possible that there's a piece of crap stuck in the hole, or it's corroded and there's rust in there. So lubricate these. If you want to change the bushings, put the stand in the up position. Now that it's not on the bike, it can go up further. You can pop the springs right off. They're under no tension. And you could remove these bolts if they come out easily. Then there's circlips in here. There's replaceable sleeves that go on it. So anyway, after we've greased this, I tend to also give it a little shot of this HHSK. It's really sticky. It's almost like chain lube. You can use chain lube if you'd like. Mostly you want to get the side stand, the little stop for the spring, the pivot for the spring, and the pivot for your auto retracting clutch lever. Also hit the ends of the springs. When you deploy the side stand and you hear a creaking noise, it's often the ends of the springs turning on the pin as the stand goes up and down. Hear that little click? That is one of these springs finally binding and then finally turning on. Dink. So we work this in, noise will go away. And that's it. We're in good shape now. Stands feel better. They retract better. They deploy better. And we're ready to reassemble that onto our transmission. These are the bolts. 4 of them. And we are going to use plenty of, you got it, copper anti-seize. I don't know if you remember from earlier in the video, I mentioned this clutch retraction rod. You need to coat the threads of that with copper anti-seize as well. That will make adjusting this much easier. Every time you adjust the clutch on these, which remember is adjusted here, you also need to readjust the side stand retraction device. Once we're done with the center stand, we're going to install the swing arm, and then we're going to change the rear drive lube fluid and install the rear wheel, and then we're going to proceed on with our service. We are ready to reinstall our swing arm, but before that, you're going to reinstall the drive shaft. What should you use for lubricant on the drive shaft? Well, you can use the Starburg's NBU 30 NPT that we use on the clutch splines, but that's kind of pricey, and it really doesn't lend itself to holding up well, especially at the back of the shaft to the rear drive where that shaft slides up and down on the spline so much. There's a much less expensive alternative. I use Bel-Ray Assembly Lube. This is black. It's a moly base, very much like Honda moly. And when it comes to a drive shaft, I don't care how much of this you slobber on it. Sorry. You know, it's a fucking drive shaft. It can sling out the excess out as much as it wants. It's not going to go anywhere. It's inside this tube. You don't have any issues of it contaminating other components or anything like that. So that is there. You're going to line your shaft up. I'll get that. Grab a rubber mallet. You have a rubber mallet. I'm going to line this up Try to do this with freaking one hand. Comical. We're in gear, lined up, and now we see the shaft slides in and out. Hold it straight, whack the end, and now you move it back and forth. The clip is secured. It's not going to go anywhere. Your next step, you're going to take some of this lube and you're going to run, see this little edge right here on the seal. I guess here. Yeah, don't slobber into the boot, Harris. Fucked hard. Just a little bit on here. What this does is it keeps water from entering the swing arm through this boot. So you just want a little bit. It also allows this boot to slide on to the lip on the output side of the transmission easier. So we just give it a little coat. Nothing extreme. Get this out of the way. Now at this point, you're going to slide this on. Sean's going to disconnect the clutch cable so we can drop the clutch arm down, and we're going to get this in position. You're going to keep going, mash this forward a few times, and now as you pull back, you feel it's springy and there's resistance. That means the boot is seated. Now we're in good shape. Again, we're going to use this Bel-Ray assembly lube on the swing arm pivot pins. And Sean's just going to get that started and stop. This side is the important side and the first side to install. Remember, this is a blank pin. There's no adjustment on this. It goes in, it bottoms out. You line the holes up, you put the bolts in, you torque them to shit. I don't remember, 9, 10 Newton meters, something like that. It's pretty low. It might actually be 8 Newton meters. Don't strip them. They do strip easy, so they don't have to be that tight. You're just preventing this plate from sliding out. This is your base setting. This positions the swing arm in the back of the transmission. Your next step is going to be screwing this pin in, which is a 6, which I don't fucking have in front of me. By the time I get this screwed in, Sean will have a couple of those other screws in. We screw this in. Notice he's using copper anti-seize on those bolts. You could use that Bel-Ray assembly lube as well, but I like the copper. In case you didn't figure that out from previous videos. There's only two things. There's only two things that I will say over and over and over again. Use copper anti-seize and use a fucking torque wrench.
Got 2 in and bottom.
Especially when you're putting somebody's fucking wheels on their truck. Use a fucking torque wrench. Okay, he's got 2 screws that are bottomed out there. We're gonna screw this in till it stops. You want to look and make sure that this nut is not touching the transmission. Sometimes the nut gets seized to the pin because some doofus before has used thread locker. The factory used to use thread locker. They told us at BMW school, stop using thread locker. The factory continued using thread locker. Some brain dead techs weren't paying attention in class, and they continued using thread locker. You don't fucking need it. Don't use it. If you're worried about these falling out, you should probably get a different job, stop working on your bike, take up bicycling, or perhaps just walking would be safer for you. You don't need to lock these with thread locker because if you torque them properly, they're not going anywhere. So if you have one of these where the nut does not move on this pin, which this may be a likely case, I'm gonna have to grab a wrench here in a second. The issue is that you're likely not going to get an accurate torque, because if that nut touches the transmission, I can't torque this center pin to 10 Newton meters like I should be able to. So if that's the case, we need to loosen these two components, which may very well involve removing the pin, putting it in your oven, my oven in the house. I have a very forgiving wife who knows that work comes first. You heat it up, you melt the Loctite, and then you take the nut off. Finish cleaning it with a pick and good welding gloves so you don't burn your fingers. Clean it while it's hot, and we get that all cleaned up. And then you can even lubricate it with the assembly lube and put it back together. Right now, I just want to see if Sean can unscrew that nut while I'm holding this T-handle. No, we are seized. We're seized. We're going to take a few minutes and clean this up.